The white-tailed doe's social structure is fascinating. How does live on the landscape dictates how everything else lives on the landscape, especially bucks.
You start by taking out the low-hanging fruit that does you the most good to help achieving your goals. Those does that are jumping the fence are working against your goals, so they should be the first.
You kind of got to let the deer show you not only how to hunt them, but how many you should take off the landscape.
This is where it all begins.
This is Deer and Deer Hunting TV. So when you're looking at a doe's social structure, what you have are maternally linked groups. And if you would put this on a map, if you'd look at an overhead view of any property, and what I'm talking about is macro view, square miles, plural. How does live on that landscape is if you draw circles. Circles almost like links of a chain, and they're all connected. That's how does approach and live on the landscape, and the fact that the oldest, most mature, most dominant does will occupy the best birthing range, and it's all about the birthing range. So that's where the most dominant does are going to occupy for most of the year. I often refer to this as high rent, low rent. The high rent areas, the best habitat, that's where the most mature, most dominant does are going to live. When you get to the low rent apartments, that's where the yearlings are going to be set up shop. That's how it works in the white-tailed doe herd.
There's two ways of looking at doe management. One is the macro view. That is the view that the states and the provinces have to take. How many deer do we have out here? What do we want for an ideal population level? How many deer do we have to kill? That is a very challenging thing to do, but they are quite good. Despite what we think, they are quite good at determining the macro. What is a sweet spot for all of these different interest groups? The hunters, the foresters, the farmers, Gertrude, who's upset at the deer eating her flowers. All of these people's interest needs to be factored in to come up with a macro deer number. Then there's the micro end. The micro end is the property level. Macro does not apply to micro, micro does not apply to macro. It just doesn't work, because deer are not evenly spread throughout the habitat. They cluster in areas. What I believe in is I believe in keep it simple, stupid. I want to hit a fine balance between the health of my habitat and having as many deer as I can to chase. The deer will tell you what they enjoy eating. You do not need a whole list of preferred browse species. Just go out in the woods, look at trees. The ones that they're eating the buds off of at this time of year, early spring, you know what? They obviously like those a little bit. The ones that they're ignoring, they don't like those. So it's quite easy. The ones they're ignoring are not preferred browse species. The ones that they are hammering on your ground is preferred browse species. If they're eating 75% of the buds of those species that they can reach very easily, odds are, you have too many deer. If you're in that 25 to 50 to 70% range right in there that are still available of the buds that they have shown you they enjoy eating and that they can get to easily enough, you're about in the sweet spot. When my habitat is telling me the deer numbers are in the sweet spot, I'm going to shoot just enough deer to go ahead and try to keep it in that sweet spot.
Deer and Deer Hunting is brought to you by Scent Killer Gold with Hunt Dry Technology Plus. Apply it, try it, and go hunt. Hornady, accurate, deadly, dependable. Get armed and deadly with Easton FMJ arrows, and by 10-Point Crossbow Technologies. There is no substitute. This segment of Deer and Deer Hunting is brought to you by Redneck Blinds.
I like to take the approach of a methodical look at doe harvesting when I'm doing it. Some people say, oh, don't worry about that. You know, that's for the state. No, I do worry about it. I want to try to balance things out as best as I can. You know, I don't want to go out there, run out there and just target all the big does. Well, that's the most meat, so no, I don't want to do that. Because what we know is the older does are the better mothers. If I have a smaller property, I'm going to leave a certain percentage of those older does alone. I'm not going to touch them. I'm not going to shoot them.
Because eventually they're going to be smelling real pretty to Mr. Big. If they're staying on our ground, guess what Mr. Big is doing right then? He's staying on our ground. So I want to protect the does that are doing what I want them to. That's helping obtain my goals. And if I have to shoot does, I'm going to be shooting those first that work against my goals. They happen to be the ones that are jumping the fence. When I have to shoot does, what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up about 50 yards off that property line, and I'm going to shoot those does that are jumping the fence. Doe down. A big part of trying to manage a deer population is controlling the does when they're overpopulated. There's a misnomer that you've got to shoot does, shoot does, shoot does. It so depends on the property itself. This one here is absolutely overrun with deer. On a 40, do you want to shoot every doe that jumps the fence? No, because you're not going to have any left. You don't even want to do that on 120 acres, because every doe on there pretty much is going to jump that fence at one time or another. But that's where you start. You start by taking out the low-hanging fruit that does you the most good to help achieving your goals. Your goal is to get Mr. Big to spend more time on your ground. Okay, those does that are jumping the fence are working against your goals, so they should be the first to go.
So if I'm hunting a smaller property and I don't have the luxury of hunting by age class, or I only can fill 1 or 2 doe tags, I might just go out there saying, okay, I'm going to try to maybe shoot 1 mature doe and 1 insubordinate doe, either a yearling or a fawn. Don't be afraid to hunt doe fawns. It can be done. And doe fawns, pound for pound, will take up more energy off that landscape than an older deer, percentage-wise.
So just keep it simple, stupid. Go out there, look over your habitat right after the seasonal low point for nutrition has just passed. In most areas, that's spring. Winter's the seasonal low point in nutrition. Inspect the food. If there's a bunch left over, you know what? You can handle more deer. If it's absolutely decimated, you probably should improve the habitat and take a few more does.
January 4th and it's freezing ass cold. These deer got up on us way too fast, but managed to get it done. I don't know how. You can tell where you hit her. Yeah, I hit her right behind the shoulder. Good hit. She barreled off over that hill, so hopefully she didn't go far.
It's kind of something you kind of got to get a feel for as you go. Because some years you might over-harvest a little bit and some years you might under-harvest a little bit. What you really need to understand is get out there, whether you're out there physically scouting or whether you're out there putting out your Cuddeback cameras and getting photos. Do your own census. Don't get crazy about it. Don't sit there and think that you have to identify every single deer on your property, because even if you did that, they might be transient deer that are living on the neighbors. You just want to get a feel for how many deer are on that property at any given time.
When we come back,
It never gets old. It never gets old.
this is Deer and Deer Hunting. This segment of Deer and Deer Hunting is brought to you by Matthews.
I want to hit a fine balance between the health of my habitat and having as many deer as I can to chase.
I think we just filmed another doe day. I ended up freehanding that one because I don't want to rip on any of my sponsors, but my shooting stick, I believe it's made by Wood Tree Shooting Sticks.
So what does a balanced deer herd look like? A balanced deer herd looks like its habitat that it's living on. If that habitat is healthy and you have native species regrowing, you're doing the right thing.
It never gets old. It never gets old. I got the TC. I love muzzleloader hunting. It's just really cool. I love it.
Oh, nice doe. Hey, I hit right where I was aiming too. Look at that. Oh, that's a dandy. That's a beautiful doe. Look at that. Hornady bullet. Now, I aimed right for the scapula and I just missed her. But that's double long. Yes.
I think one of the most important aspects of muzzleloader accuracy is consistency. You're basically building a cartridge, building a load in the barrel of your rifle, component by component, and you want those loads to be exactly the same from shot to shot. Here's how I get that consistency. The first thing I do when I get my Thompson Center Strike back from the range or back from a hunt is to give it a thorough cleaning. And the last step in that process is to run an oiled patch down the barrel. This is going to help preserve the barrel. It's going to help keep it from rusting. But that also means that the next time I go to the range or the next time I go on a hunt, I need to get that oil out of the barrel before I build my first load. So I'm just going to run a dry patch down the barrel and remove that oil residue. The next thing I'm going to do is pop a couple of caps. Now this does two things. First off, it's going to make sure there's no oil or other debris in the breech hole. It's going to give it a nice clear path for that fire to get to the pellet. But the second thing it's going to do, it's going to foul the barrel. It's going to give it a slight fouling. And this is important because we know that bullet impact from a clean barrel and a dirty barrel are going to be different. And this is where the control factor comes in. I'm going to be able to create that same amount of fouling shot to shot to give me better consistency. Okay, now we're ready to load the gun. Simple process. Start with your pellets. I'm shooting 2 pellets, 100 grains. Get those down the barrel, followed by my bullet. Here, little tip here. This is a ramrod, but it doesn't refer to ramming the bullet down the barrel. You want to use really even pressure when you push that bullet down against your powder charge. So just give it a nice slow push. Then when you feel it seat on the on the powder charge, just give it another little push. When I get my load built down the gun and I know that the bullet is seated correctly, I'll go ahead and I'll take a knife and I'll make a little mark right here on my ramrod. That way I'll have a reference point for future shots, so when I put the next load down there, I can just get a quick visual and I know that I seated the bullet exactly like the last one. Okay, we've got our gun loaded now and we're ready to take a shot. Okay, we're ready to repeat the process. I'll begin by cleaning the barrel. Okay, I've got the barrel clean. Now we're going to pop a couple caps in there. And what's that going to do? It's going to give us that same amount of fouling we had with the first shot. So we can just repeat this process over and over again. And what this will do, it'll get the barrel back to the same condition that it was for the first shot, the same amount of fouling. We can just repeat that process over and over again, and we'll get that consistency from shot to shot. Consistency, it's the key to muzzleloader accuracy. Get it right at the range, you'll get it right in the field.
Deer and Deer Hunting is brought to you by Analogics. Protect your herd with the power of science. Thompson Center, America's master gunmakers. Saber Broadheads, straight through it. Hunter Safety System, stay connected. And by Cuddyback, more deer, fewer blanks.
Ready? You know, whether you're hunting 40 acres or 20 acres or 200 acres, you got to manage your property for does. And an antlerless segment is important not only to take down the herd, so the density is going to be proper for the land. It's going to be less stress on the browse, less stress on the habitat. But when you do that, if you have the luxury, I always say if you have the luxury of having a bigger property that you can take a lot of does off of, you want to do it by age classes. And you can do that just by using a good pair of binoculars, and you can pinpoint does. Now, you're not going to be able to age does like you age bucks. You're going to be able to age does from fawns to yearlings and full adults. Full adult is a 2-year-old or older. Now, if you're hunting a smaller property, you just need to figure out how many does you can take off that property without affecting your overall hunting. A small property is a lot different, especially if you have a lot of neighbors that are hunting too. You really want to rein back how many does you kill, because those does have very small home ranges, especially the big ones. If you have a big doe on your property, you have a small property, you probably want to leave her alone. And if you're going to want to fill a doe tag, you want to fill it on a younger deer. A doe fawn, a yearling doe, perfect to take out. Why is that? Because those does are going to be kicked off to other properties through dispersal, and also those does take the most energy off the land. A fawn or a yearling consumes a lot more food because their skeleton is not fully developed. So they're going to eat a lot more food throughout the year, which is going to really put a lot of pressure on your land to try to keep it optimum for the deer that you have on it. Over the course of our filming for this fall, for the television show and our online videos, I've had the opportunity to hunt a variety of properties, small properties, large properties, and I've been allowed to help manage these properties by taking off different age classes. And that's really, you really can become a better deer hunter just aging does. Because when you see them, you're going to be able to know how your land fits into the larger ecosystem. 640 acres, 35 deer per square mile, pretty much max. A lot of properties have more than that. You really don't want to have many more than that, because it's really going to affect the browse and the habitat. So to manage that, how many can you take off of that? 35 deer, perfect world, 50% does, 50% bucks. It's not a perfect world. Sometimes it's skewed just a little bit one way or the other, not too much more. You hear these things, oh, I got 10 does for every buck. You really don't. because it's almost physically, it's not almost, it is physically impossible for the land to sustain that kind of sex ratio. But that's a topic for another day. The thing you want to understand or get your head around is how does your property fit into that square mile of habitat? 35 deer, how many does should you take off of it? 35 deer on a 640 acre piece, you're going to take off, if it's really maxed out, 5, 8 maybe in a year. Out of those 5 or 8, you don't want to kill all the big mama does, because those are the ones that are going to be the home bodies. They're not dispersing anymore. Those are the ones that are going to stick close to home, and those mama does are the best mothers. So you're going to want to take a couple of them, obviously, good meat, really nice plump doe. We love to kill those. But you also want to take some of those younger age classes. Now, buck fawns. Don't run for the roof if you kill a buck fawn. It happens. You try not to let it happen, but it happens. And don't let anybody shame you into it. It happens. 22% approximately of the entire nation's antlerless harvest is going to be buck fawns. It happens. You try not to let it happen, but the second you start really holding back on your doe harvesting efforts is when that deer population is going to explode. So just keep that in mind and have fun hunting. Great deer. Great day. And our work here in Illinois is done.